All right, we are here today with Tyncy Miller. We're the North Texas Council, State Board of Education District 12 Vetting Committee. These are the rules for the vetting process. No one is allowed in the room except the vetting panel and the candidate. All electronics allowed in the room shall be turned off except laptops used by the vetting committee and the video recorders provided by the vetting committee. Cell phones or voice recorders shall be turned off in the room. No written material or notes will be taken by the candidate. North Texas Council vetting panel members and candidate agree that all questions and responses at this vetting session are to remain confidential property until videos are uploaded and considered public information on the North Texas Council website and/or an alternate website. Verbal questions will be asked and verbal responses to those questions will be given with 1 to 2 minute responses for each question. The candidate will receive a copy of his or her vetting interview recording, upon which time the video is posted on the North Texas Council website and/or alternate website. So with that, we will now introduce ourselves to you. Tyncy.
Liz Moser from Garland.
Janie Britton from Garland.
Barbara Harless from Murphy.
Babs Millward Rowlett.
Joanne Snodgrass Allen.
And at this time, we would like for you, Ms. Miller, to take 2 minutes to introduce us to yourself and tell us why you're running for the State Board of Education.
I'm Tyncy Miller, and I'm the conservative Republican candidate for the State Board of Education District 12. My record, my experience, and my conservative values that I never compromised while I served on the State Board make me the strongest candidate in this race. 4 of those years, I was chair of the board appointed by Governor Rick Perry twice, and then confirmed by the Senate twice. I served an extra 6 months as chair at the pleasure of the governor. I'm a reading expert focusing specifically on dyslexia, trained and taught in the reading laboratory at Texas Scottish Rite Hospital under Dr. Lucius Waite. I became passionate about these kids learning to read and learning the basics, and I wanted to make a difference. I helped facilitate the passage of the first dyslexia law in our state. And then, as a phonics teacher, I helped implement the first phonics-based curriculum in our state, and the results, 98% of all 3rd graders passed the 3rd grade reading test based on the new phonics curriculum. Phonics works, history was made. Textbooks need to be historically and factually accurate, not politically correct. Textbook publishers are notorious for hiring liberal professors to write their chapters and then not edit the books. That needs to stop. Last but not least, our permanent school fund, best known as our children's textbook fund. I will not sacrifice the sacredness of that precious fund for those in Austin, liberal politicians, as well as some State Board of Education members who want to raid that fund for other purposes. Our children's future is non-negotiable. As a conservative, concerned, and effective leader, I want to go back and fight for the kids of this state and continue to defend and protect their precious fund. I'm endorsed by the Dallas County Republican Assembly, Representative Jody Lovenberg, Roger Staubach, Bill Ames, and Kathy Adams, and Senator John Corona, and others. Thank you, God bless you, and I ask for your support.
Okay, this is your first question. You have 1 minute to answer this question. What made you decide to run for a position on the Texas State Board of Education, and what is your primary goal?
Well, specifically what I referred to in my introduction. 2 years ago, when my opponent at the time ended up winning, and he had no really history or record of a voting record. So he went down there and started voting with Democrats, but the main thing that really got my attention was the fact that he joined with 8 other board members, wrote a letter, hand-delivered it over to the legislature leaders, and asked to raid the kids' textbook fund to make up the difference in the shortfall. And that is unconstitutional in my book. And so that is the reason my friends called and said, Tyncy, come on back, we need you. You understand, I fought for 26 years protecting that fund and falling on my sword. And it is not appropriate to lose that fund. So that's why I'm doing it.
Thank you.
You have, you have 2 minutes to answer this question. Senate Bill 6, which became law in the last Texas legislative session, defines open source instructional materials as electronic instructional materials available for download at no charge to a student. With Senate Bill 6, why do you think that eligible institutions, including certain research universities and members of the American Association of Universities, are allowed to submit open source instructional materials for adoption without the State Board of Education being able to reject the materials? You have 2 minutes.
Well, I am against House Bill 6 or Senate Bill 6, and I wrote Senator Shapiro and everyone I could down there. I was not on the board at that time, but I wrote and told them not to support that, but it passed. It is part of the liberal legislators in the House and Senate that really want to encourage that approach and go around the State Board of Education without vetting or going through the appropriate checks to make sure that the book matches our curriculum and is accurate and factual. Apparently we were told that the professor can say, hey, it covers the curriculum. How do we know that? So it's a watering down of our process, which is considered one of the best in the country, and I'm absolutely against it. Anything we can do to either add more rules and regulations from the state board level, and then hopefully try to repeal it in the legislature this next time and change it. I'm very concerned because there's another piece of that they can send the money directly down to the local school districts where then they can buy anything they want. I'm very worried about that. I believe it sets the schools up to spending all this local dollars and then not having enough for real instructional material left for the kids. And that opens us up to a lawsuit.
Thank you.
You have 2 minutes to answer this question. With the passage of Senate Bill 6, local school districts will be given their own allotment of funds and more flexibility to purchase textbooks, open source instructional materials, and computer equipment, as well as pay for salaries and training of technology personnel with less oversight by the State Board of Education. Do you see this as a good thing? If yes, why? If not, why not?
Absolutely not. California did this many years ago, and where they sent the money straight down to the districts and told the superintendents they could buy laptops, Kindles, whatever they wanted, as well as books. Well, guess what? They spent all their money. They didn't have enough money left over for the instructional materials, okay, or the books or the true content material. And so when the kids were tested, they had not been taught over the curriculum. And so a lawsuit, big time, came to California. I tried to warn our leaders over in the legislature when this was happening, when I saw that move going. It puts us truly at risk. It does, and our kids at risk. But we've always been able to review the books from the state level, okay, and then make a list, send it out to the school district, and then they can pick any book they want off the list. And it's already been vetted, and they love the conforming approach, where that everything in that book matches the curriculum, okay? And most schools really prefer to have a conforming, 100% conforming book matching all the curriculum, not one of these kind of haphazard things that they're referring to in this bill. This is another approach, in my view, of trying to take away the power of the State Board of Education and water things down with a liberal agenda.
You have 1 minute to answer this question. Thomas Ratliff was an active lobbyist when he ran for the State Board of Education, but this information did not come out until after he was elected. Have you ever been a lobbyist, or do you have any other potential conflicts of interest that others might perceive as influencing your State Board of Education service?
No, I have no conflict of interest, and I didn't. Ratliff came on the board after I left, so I did not know his background in that. I knew his father, so Bill Ratliff, who was a senator from Mount Pleasant, and but I didn't really know Thomas. So, but absolutely, I have no conflict of interest.
You have 2 minutes to answer this question. Education Week, June 2010, states that Democrats and some Republicans, including Texas State Senator Kiel Zilliger, if I said that wrong, Zilliger, plan to publish bills in 2013 that will rein in the State Board of Education authority or abolish it altogether. This is not just a Texas issue. In Iowa, Republican Senator Brad Zahn introduced Bill number 2371 to eliminate Iowa's Department of Education and State Board. This bill moves authority to regents and councils that are unelected and unaccountable to the people. What are your thoughts on this, and what will you do to keep the authority of the elected State Board of Education?
Well, first of all, we need the elected citizen board as a check and balance to the Texas education bureaucracy. Right now, there is no oversight over that bureaucracy. That was stripped from the State Board of Education in 1995. Bill Ratliff, a senator then, was the author of that, if you will, and his friend Paul Sadler, one was a senator, one was a House. I'm very concerned about them wanting to strip us of our power. And from the first day I was on the board in 1984, and it was a result of the big reform movement of 1984, 83, 84. And from then on, every 2 years, the legislators, started undermining the state board and pulling away our power. 1995 was the biggie, and that's what Bill Ratliff did. He literally pulled the state board over here away from the oversight of the Texas Education Agency, made the Commissioner of Education an appointed job by the governor, whereas before, the 15-member board by the 1983 law we were over that commissioner, 15 people. We hired and fired that commissioner, okay? And then we were over the Texas Education Agency. So there was a check and balance built in automatically so that you spread it out, the power out, and it was fair and democratic. We lost that, and it took about 2 years for everybody to begin to realize how dysfunctional the state board had become. And it's because of the way they wrote that law in 1995. We need to get that back.
You have 2 minutes to answer this question. What 3 pieces of legislation related to education would you like to see pushed in the upcoming legislative session?
Well, first of all, I'd like to see our power come back. It's going to be hard, but we need, as I just finished explaining about the governance structure, we need to get an elected State Board of Education back over the Texas Education Agency because they have no one to answer to. So that would be the first thing I do. I would love to get the ability to appoint the Commissioner of Education, but that's something the governor loves. I know that. I mean, all governors love it, okay? So the other thing I would like to see is to work on the issue of immersion in bilingual education. We have a situation in Texas where bilingual education was put into law probably in the 60s. And because it's in law, it has become very ingrained, okay? And now we have bilingual teachers. The schools require these teachers, okay? Now, bilingual education, or the program, has proved not to be 100% perfected. Kids are still graduating without being proficient in English, and so immersion has scientific research behind it. California went ahead and did it in about the mid-90s, and it came from the Hispanic parents who said, I want my children to learn English, so let's do immersion. They did it, and the kids' grades started going up. The dropout rate dropped. I mean, parents were happy. As chairman of the board, I invited, with the support of Gail Lowe on the board at the time, to bring in the researcher to talk to us about immersion. And then we brought in a superintendent, teacher, and a parent from California who then spoke to us and shared with us it can work. And we need to do it, okay? But we also need to realize it has to be a law. So,
Thank you.
You have 1 minute to answer this question. Do you believe charter schools should be allowed to promote other cultures over American culture? And do you support allowing charter schools to use the permanent school fund to guarantee construction bonds? Why or why not? 1 minute.
okay. First of all, charter schools need to promote America's exceptionalism and our curriculum that we work so hard in the 4 basic subject areas. That's what charter schools are about, okay? They're like a private public school, okay, that was created so that teachers could be innovative and use different approaches, you know, to kids learning, but they still had to abide by the curriculum. I do not like, there's a particular charter school that got concerns about that apparently is coming from Turkey, and it's really being questioned, and we need to look into that, and I'm told that the Commissioner of Education is looking into it. I think the State Board needs to look into it, but anyway, that, I think was there a second part of the question did I cover?
I think.
Oh, okay, because I support charter schools, you know. Oh, the bond issue.
Your time is up.
Yeah, if you'll allow me, okay.
Your time is up.
Okay, all right.
I'm sorry, we
Okay.
have to do the same
Okay,
thing among
sure,
all the candidates.
Sure. Okay.
You have 2 minutes to answer this question. During the Social Studies Curriculum Standards Review in 2009-2010, the State Board of Education voted to make changes which some considered to be controversial. Do you support the changes made or not, and why?
I supported all the changes that were made in all of, from the reading, the science, the history. Okay, and well, the math is up again, but back when we did the math too. So yes, we had hearty discussions, okay? And everybody got real emotional about the issues, but the bottom line is we came out with the best conservative curriculum, bar none, in the United States. I'm very, very proud of all of the subjects that we worked hard on. Okay.
You have 1 minute to answer this question. Do you favor English immersion or bilingual education?
I think I answered that earlier, but if you want me to say it again, I absolutely believe that we need to do immersion, but we're going to have to make it a law. Okay, it's a pretty big political issue, but these kids need to become proficient in English. It is not fair to them to put them through a school system that really enables them not to be able to learn and be proficient in English when they graduate and go out into the work world. It's almost a form of abuse in my view, because these kids deserve to have the very best, and we need to give it to them. So.
You have 2 minutes to answer this question. What part of the TEKS, Texas Essential Knowledge and Skills, covers sex education? At what age level is this taught? Do you agree with it? If you don't agree with this, what would you change?
Well, first of all, we've got to realize that thanks to the conservative legislators back in 1995, they put it into law. And because we had a huge controversy on our board in 1994 with the publishers of the health textbooks, and we asked for more abstinence put into the books, and they didn't want to do it. So we said, I'm sorry, we want it. So we went over home on Christmas, made some corrections, came back, presented it, they didn't want it. Well, we did it anyway, because we wanted more abstinence. They go over to the legislature in 1995 and convince the legislators to take the authority of the content away from the State Board of Education, and that was the issue right there. And it was over sex education. So thanks to Warren Chisholm, who was conservative legislature at the time, he authored the bill, and it passed without a problem. In other words, it says there will be a committee of parents. If they decide to teach sex education, it's their option to do it. They don't have to, okay? Then it has to be abstinence-based, okay? And they spelled it out clearly, and it's in law. So there is no way anybody can get around that, okay? And I happen to believe very strongly that we need to have abstinence-based sex education.
You have 2 minutes to answer this question. What is the importance of teaching the Magna Carta, U.S. Constitution, Bill of Rights, private property rights, and private business ownership?
Well, it's the exceptionalism of America, and that's the core of our history curriculum. And thanks to people like my good friend Bill Ames, who fought as a volunteer retired businessman. He is proficient in history. And we go back over 10 years. And he has helped me, and he really stood by me, stood by all of us on the board, and made sure that we had that core into the history. One of the key things that he did, and I give him credit for this, is he said we need a week of it's called Celebrating America Week in each grade. And before they didn't have that. And this way, the teachers have to teach the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, and all that, and all the wonderful things about America. They cannot water that down or skip over it. And that was a great victory, and I was really proud of that. So, yeah.
Thank you.
You have 2 minutes to answer this question. What does the current Texas Essential Knowledge's text?
It's 12.
Oh, I'm on the wrong one. I beg your pardon. You have 2 minutes to answer this question. Several North Texas superintendents representing the North Texas Regional Consortium recently sent a letter to the State Board of Education and the governor with concern about standardized testing. In the letter, they discussed, quote, relentless test preparation and boring memorization of facts, close quote. Do you agree with the low opinion of memorization, which is sometimes called drill and kill, that is common among many educators? If yes, why? If no, why not?
Memorization is one of the best things in the world for our brain. And as a trained dyslexia and phonics teacher and working at the hospital with Dr. Wade, it made it very clear what's important and what the kids are going to retain and how important the three-dimensional parts of learning period is important, okay? And first of all, the kids, we're going to have to teach the kids, all right? They're going to have to be tested because it's a state law, okay, to do that. So you measure, the measurement is teach, measure, okay? And that's this new test that is coming in called the STAR test. And I call it the old-fashioned, what I did when we grew up, the final exam. We all took final exams. We learned the subject, and we were tested over at the end of the semester or the end of the year. And we're going back to that, and the research is supporting that approach. But as they call drill and kill, it works, and the kids need it, okay, yeah, for the development of their brain.
You have 2 minutes to answer this question. What does the current TEKS, Texas Essential Knowledge and Skills, say about evolution and creationism? Do you agree with the current standards, and if not, how should they be changed?
I think they're great, and that was one of the other fights that we had, and all the theories, our agreement was all theories would be taught, okay, and everybody agreed on it, okay. And I think intelligent design needs to be taught along with all the other theories, okay. So we were very pleased, all of us were very pleased by the time we got through it. I call this like birthing a baby, you all, when you work on curriculum updates. It's pretty painful, but after it's over, you forget it, you go on down the road, and we've got the best, okay? I'm very proud of the science curriculum.
You have 2 minutes to answer this question. 45 states have adopted the Common Core standards, which is a set of K through 12 curriculum standards developed by a group of national organizations and supported by the federal government. States who adopt Common Core are being granted waivers from meeting certain No Child Left Behind NCLB goals. States who do not adopt Common Core may be penalized with the loss of Title I federal money for low-income districts. Do you support adoption of the Common Core standards in Texas? If yes, why? If not, why not? And how do you address the consequences of non-adoption?
Well, a consequence of what?
Non-adoption of the Common Core standards.
Oh, okay. Well, first of all, let's get rid of Obama, okay? And we'll get a president, a Republican president in there that'll do away with that concept of the core, and also do away with the Department of Education. That's another step forward. But no, I absolutely do not believe in the Common Core. I don't want anybody telling me from Washington what our kids need to learn. That's terrible. It's just awful. Texas, from 1984 up to this day, we have been on the cutting edge of developing curriculum, the best in the nation. I promise you. We used to invite different state boards of education from different around the country to come visit and to share, and we found that we didn't need to share because they were picking our brain. They were absolutely surprised at how far ahead we were in developing our curriculum and being on the cutting edge of subject matter. Texas has always been out front, but this is a statewide issue. This is not a national issue. I'm afraid that will push us into a dictatorship approach, if you will, to government, and I'm absolutely against it. Yeah.
You have 1 minute to answer this question. Should all history and government courses be required to reinforce the factual differences between a pure democracy and a pure Republican form of government?
Well, I think the way we developed the history teaks was to talk about a republic constitution. In other words, a representative form of government. And we made very clear that it was balanced and it was accurate, and we felt very comfortable about that. And I feel like that's the bottom line on our history curriculum. So.
You have 2 minutes to answer this question. Are alternative sexual lifestyles such as homosexual, bisexual, and transgender included in the Texas Essential Knowledge and Skills? If so, at what grade level and in what core subjects, for example, English, science, or social studies? Do you agree with the TEKS on this issue?
I don't know where they are in the TEKS, and my understanding is they're not in there. And that's one of those issues where I don't believe in political correctness, okay? We need to be factual and accurate on everything, but no, I don't believe it's in there, and I don't support it at all.
Thank you.
This is your last question, and you have 2 minutes to answer. In traditional education, the teacher is the primary source of information and authority and disseminates knowledge. In constructivism, the teacher acts as a facilitator, interacting with and assisting students to construct their own learning. Please state your philosophy on constructivism versus traditional education.
I happen to support Dr. Jean Shaw, who was the most famous researcher in the field of reading at Harvard University. She's not with us anymore. But she did some great research on the fact that research supports teacher-driven instruction, not this concept of everybody sit around a table and everybody write a theme together, okay? You absolutely have to have a teacher-driven, if you will, instruction. and that teacher needs to know that subject area and the appropriate teaching strategies that go with it. So.
Great, thank you.
That's it.